Hi there, Brian of London here again in my bomb shelter in the sky in Tel Aviv. Last night there was a pretty atrocious terrorist attack in a place called Sarona Market in the center of Tel Aviv. It's a popular place, pretty open, in fact, criticized for being too open, possibly lacking in security, and that was shown last night when two Arabs came, sat at a restaurant, ate something, drank something perhaps, and then just pulled out guns and started shooting people. And the result is that four Israelis are dead, um, children are left without parents, and two terrorists are captured. It's atrocious. And what happens immediately afterwards, which you don't really see outside of Israel very much, is there are celebrations. There are celebrations in Ramallah, in Gaza, in Hebron. The Palestinians celebrate, and even inside Israel at the Damascus Gate. And these celebrations are rarely, if ever, filmed. Now, they've got enough video cameras, and they make it onto social media, pictures especially, some short videos, but you don't really see them. And I want to tell you a story that I've not really told in public. I've told this privately to people, and I wrote it once anonymously a long time ago. And this story will explain to you how the news that you see, how the pictures, how they get to you, how they're filtered, and why it matters. And it's I can't tell it quickly, or at least I'm not going to tell it quickly. I'm going to give you the details because I think it's a very, very important part of the corruption of the entire news media. Something that, along with Richard Landes, I like to call lethal journalism. It is journalism whose the outcome of which leads to people taking up arms and going to kill Jews. So I believe that it is lethal. Okay, so the story goes back to 2003. In 2003, I was a management consultant in the UK, working for some pretty big firms. I'm not going to name them. And my firm got a job looking at something called Associated Press Television News, APTN. Now, you've heard of AP for sure. AP is the world's largest news gathering organization. It's really a club. It was a club founded by the newspapers, mostly on the East Coast in the mid 1800s, I think 1846, I'd check. And what they did was they gathered together as a club to make the process of paying for telegraph transmission from the West Coast cheaper. So what they would do is they would have one reporter send one report on the telegraph from the West Coast to the East Coast. And then the various newspapers that subscribe to the AP would all take that one report and write their own reports around it. Just the bare facts would come across the telegraph, and the newspapers would then write their own stories and compete. And that was the foundation of the AP. And to this day, the AP is still a not-for-profit like club owned by the newspaper. So the newspapers all put in a certain amount of money into it, and that depends on how big they are and whether they're founding members or not. And in return, they get access to all of the AP stories. So if the AP put a story on their newswire, any newspaper can run it, either unedited or edited. They can do what they want with it. And that's how Associated Press, the print version, worked in 2003. But in 2003, I went to work in Camden in London at a place called Associated Press Television News. And it's a huge building just behind Camden Lock, which is a famous tourist place. Lots of people go there for the market. You get offered drugs on your way into work every morning. It was a fun place to work. But I got there just weeks, actually, I think 3 weeks before the start of the Second Gulf War in March of 2003. And I was there to do a job to see if we could advise them as a financial consultant how they could improve the payback from their vast library. And this was a library on actual cassette tapes, on U-matic and various other formats of both analog and digital cassette tapes. This is pre-digitization. So we were there, myself and a few other consultants, and I get access to this place and I start to understand, how does it work? Okay, this is how it works. This is how the news gets to you. All over the world, APTN has bureaus. Now, it doesn't have all that many for the entire world, and it has not all that many permanent staff. But what they do have is, in all of those different markets, they have stringers. They have freelancers who will film things, and if it's newsworthy, they'll take it along to their APTN office and they'll try to sell the footage. And APTN will buy it, often on various terms, and those local offices will give it a once over and upload the majority of it. That gets uploaded. Back in 2003, this was all via dedicated satellite links. I'm sure the internet has made a big change to that. So it would get put on the satellite link, uploaded and downloaded in Camden. And in Camden, they had a 24-hour newsroom. So into that room would flow all of this raw news. It could be press conferences, it could be sports. They had three main areas: sports, entertainment, and hard news. And it would be press conferences, red carpet walks for the entertainment people, press conferences for sports people, that kind of stuff. And every now and then there'd be an actual, newsworthy event that they will have captured film of. And again, remember, this is early days. This is a pre-iPhones when I was there. So the vast majority of the material they were handling was professionally shot. So materials collated, sent, and then it gets to a big room, the Global Newswire edit room. And in there are 50, 60 people, various jobs, editors, people who type descriptions. So they get a piece of footage, they edit it into about a 5 or 6 minute story, what they call a story. And it has natural sound. It has whatever sound was recorded by the videographer at the time. They then write a written description. There's no voiceover. There's nothing it's not a finished, it's not what you would call finished news. So they package up maybe 5 to 6 of these 5 or 6 minute pieces. They produce a 25 to 30 minute show, which is 5 or 6 pieces of news. And every half an hour, bang, that goes out. And it goes out to everyone in the world. They follow the clock. So they follow the clock. So in the mornings, they'll be working for the Asian markets. And as the day goes on, they'll work through Europe, and then they'll work towards America. Again, this is 2003. Yeah. The stories that go out there then get picked up, and they get picked up by everybody. BBC, CNN, Fox, and a myriad of small local stations everywhere in the world. And some newspapers, of course, even subscribe to the video feed because they want to see what's going on. This feed is it's the most important things, because these pictures then get taken by, for example, the BBC. BBC will decide, okay, this goes out on our nightly news. They'll cut the video up how they would like to. Maybe they have a reporter on the ground wherever the video comes from. It's Georgia or somewhere else, or Turkey. They'll have a reporter go out, film a little stand up with the microphone. You've all seen it. Here I am standing outside of the White House where something happened earlier. And then while they're talking, they will cut to what's called B-roll, which is the video that they got from APTN. And together that will make a little storage, and it'll be a 4 minute, 3 minutes, or 2 minutes. They'll drop into the nightly news, and boom, away it goes. And that's how the whole world's news operates. Perhaps I'm taking too long to get through this, but bear with me. There is another part of APTN's business that operates in the same office. And this is where it gets interesting, really interesting. For one part of the world, this process is done but then an extra step is added on. The extra step is APTN can, for your particular market, it can produce a finished news item ready to go out on your TV. It's got to stand up with a journalist that your audience knows. It's highly produced. It complies with local censorship laws if you have those. And for this service, this value-added service, you will pay quite considerably more. Can anybody guess which part of the world pays for this service? Well, I won't leave you hanging. It's the Gulf Arab states. And it was then. And it still is today. Now, this was pre-Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera came along as a business model to not just compete with this, but they obviously saw an opening in the market. And APTN, and I knew this from the figures, this was a very, very, very lucrative part of their business. So how did they serve this business different from the entire rest of the world? Well, it turns out that it's basically another 50 or 60 people doing pretty much the same stuff, sitting in a room adjacent to the room through which the entire world's news goes. Okay, what's the effect of this? So you've got two rooms. One room is working in Arabic. It's Camden in London, but they're working almost exclusively in Arabic because that's the market they're serving. That room has exactly the same skill set as the global room that sits next to it, but it's just Arabic, and it serves Gulf Arab states. And what do they want to see? Especially around the time the Gulf War was kicking off. Actually, a lot of the times when I was walking in and out of this office, I was seeing Palestinians screaming and waving their shoes and doing all sorts of other stuff and rioting, being shot by Israelis, because that is what Gulf Arab states like to show to their people. It's a very, very useful way of saying to their people, hey, however bad you think it is being a near as damn it slave in Qatar, you'd be worse off under the Israelis. Well, that's what they're saying. And the corruption, the big corruption that I saw was that jobs come up between these two rooms. If someone is a junior editor in the Arab room, they will get a promotion and they will become a more senior editor in the global room. And I found that at least half, probably even more, of the staff in the global room were fluent Arabic speakers. That wouldn't be surprising in Israel. It's a bit of a shock in London, I can tell you. And this is where, I'll leave it to the written word perhaps, but I couldn't escape the feeling that there was an almost deliberate attempt to put inside that building a control system, and a control system on what you, the dispassionate viewer outside, get to see. The way that the news was filtered, what was left on the cutting room floor, what never made it out into this global news wire, that is an enormous power. That's actually more powerful than what they do show, what they choose not to show. And it is my firm contention, and everything I've seen about the media in the 13 years since I saw that, says that the media filter good news about Israel. They will not show it. They will not show Israel in a positive light. And having seen what goes on in that building in Camden, I absolutely know why. And this is such a deep level of corruption, because this is before the BBC, before MSNBC, before CNN. Even if those outlets wanted to be more fair, they're not even being shown what never gets uploaded to them. And none of these organizations anymore have large, dedicated staff anywhere in the world. Even Israel, which has far more foreign correspondents than it really should for its size, even Israel still has basically a skeleton staff. Though I do realize, I'm pretty certain that Israel has more foreign journalists in it than the whole of Africa, for example. That's insane. Matty Friedman wrote about this. But This problem with the news wires, and it extends to, I think, how their written work goes out as well. This problem with the news wires is insidious, deep, and you can't understand what you're seeing on your televisions about Israel unless you understand this story. Anyway, I've talked far too long with one take. I'm going to just actually have to pause this shot for a little while because I need to go and get something very important. Okay, back. I knew this video was going to take a long time, so I didn't want my indigenous Israeli Gold Star beer to get too warm, so I left it in the freezer. Anyway, it's Thursday. We had a horrible, horrible event yesterday in Tel Aviv. Life goes on. People were busily eating in exactly the same restaurant that was attacked last night, today. I think the Australian ambassador went there and a bunch of other dignitaries. Thank you. That's how we do it here. You're not going to force us out of our indigenous lands with this kind of terrorist activity. It's not going to work. And we're going to carry on having a beer on a Thursday during Ramadan. Ramadan, if you, I don't. So I don't need to follow those rules. So cheers. And until the next time, this is Brian of London in Bomb Shelter in Tel Aviv. See you soon.